Graham Jason Matthews here with WrestleRant. We're talking to Zack Heydorn here today, the author of the all-new, stunning, The Wrestling Artistry of Steve Austin. Zack, I've been following you for a while now. First time chatting face-to-face over audio, over video. Great to have you, man. Great to have you for such an awesome occasion. Congrats on the release of your new book.
Thank you so much, man. Yes, I've admire of your work. You do some great stuff, and it's an honor to be here. And I really appreciate it. It's been a fun week, and glad to have the show be a part of it.
So we're talking on Monday. First of all, thanks. I appreciate that. But yeah, we're talking on Monday. The book comes out on Friday, just 3 days ago. And as I said to you a second ago before we hit record, you have it on Amazon now. You have like the physical book in your hands. You got that a little while ago, but now it's like publicly available for everyone to have. And you had your everyone that signed up early getting the book. What's been like the feedback like for you in the last couple of days, just seeing all that online?
I mean, it's been incredible. I mean, like the not. I mean, just people getting it in general is just a really cool thing to like.
Hmm.
Obviously get it out because it's like you and the computer, right? And like that's it until the book goes out. And so I'm just glad that people can get it and people seem excited to get it. And that means a lot. Like people that I don't know and people that just follow my work and are interested in the project. It's really cool to see happen. And then just it's a process. Like writing a book it's a long process.
Hmm.
It's arduous at times. There's ups and downs in terms of like your momentum for it and all of that. And so to see it come together and actually be out in the wild is just it's pretty cool. And I hope people pick it up and hopefully people enjoy it. And if not, like let me know that too. I'm looking
Yeah.
for feedback one way or the other.
Well, listen, dude, it's been in the works for a while. Like I was telling you before we hit record here. I know you announced it about a year ago, I think on 316 day, right?
Yes, correct.
Obviously, it was
Yeah.
in the process of being made even well before that. So, how long did the process take to get this book made?
So this was a 3-year process,
Wow.
little over. So we like everything came together on what the idea is and what the book's going to look like and all that about 3 years ago. And so, it took about 11, 12 months to write it all.
Hmm.
And then it was like, another year plus to edit it and like, and make sure that it's crisp from just a book perspective, that it's
Hmm.
ready for print and it makes sense and all that. And that was like definitely like the arduous process of just editing it and reading
Hmm.
it. I've read this thing so many times. Somebody asked me yesterday, like, are you going to read it now that you have the hard copy? And I'm like, me, no,
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
not. Maybe give it a couple years and then I'll pick it up again. But so yeah, so it just was such a process. And then after that, it was like getting it laid out and getting the artwork put into it and
Hmm.
making sure that that all was there. And then it kind of just happened after that. So all those things together just made for, it just doesn't happen overnight. And I had a great publisher in Hybrid Shoot, and Jonathan Snowden, who wrote the Shamrock book and some
Yeah, of
other
course.
other MMA books, and just has some other great work out there. Was a big help in not only spearheading the editing process and the layout process and all that, but also a mentor for how this is supposed, how this goes. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, but 3 years. I mean, in a way, it went by fast, and in other ways, it's like, holy cow, it's been 3 years since we started this. So it's a bit of it's a cool journey to reminisce back on.
Oh, no, yeah, I'm sure. And the cool thing about it too is that it's not like your average, it's not a biography. Like you're breaking down, it literally is what the title suggests. You're breaking down the art form of not wrestling in general, but specifically Steve Austin, his matches from over the course of his career. I mean, how much Stone Cold content do you have to consume to write this book? And are you sick of seeing Stone Cold matches after all this time?
I was at a certain point, like after I wrote the book and after the first draft was done, I was like, okay, I'm not watching Steve Austin for a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
But he's such a good wrestler that it's easy to get back into it.
of course.
I had to watch a lot of Steve Austin matches. I mean, a lot. And I mean, that was the point. That was the
Hmm.
idea. That was the whole goal of the project, was to examine his work from the beginning of his career to his last match. And the only way to do that was to dive in. And so like I was excited for that part of it. Like that was like I said, writing the book and researching it and watching that stuff was definitely the like really exciting. And luckily like there wasn't a whole lot of, oh man, like I got to track down this match or I got to track
Yeah.
down that match, because a lot of his work is out there, either in like on Peacock with the WWE Network, or there's a lot of it on YouTube, where other,
Mhm.
some collectors have some stuff. So that wasn't as heavy of a lift as I thought it was going to be. So then, just got to kick back and just watch Steve Austin matches. And, they're very different, like throughout his career, depending on what era that you're talking about. Like whether it's his early rookie year and you're watching his stuff against Chris Adams in 1990 or 1991, you're turning on WCW to watch Stunning Steve, and then
Mhm.
he's got that era with the Hollywood Blondes, so you're seeing him in a tag team environment, and then all through Ringmaster and ECW Steve Austin and early Stone Cold stuff, and like the height of his popularity. So it it was a lot, but it also was, he's got a diverse mix of stuff for
Yep.
his career. And so, kind of that freshened things up a bit as I went along. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've struggled to find like a Steve Austin match that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of them now, and I write about a lot of them. There's some cool hidden gems, that I found along the way. And the way the book is structured, it's structured by those eras that I
Yep.
just talked about. And within each one, in addition to like the artistic analysis that I do on his matches, which is like the essence of the book,
Mhm.
I also have a section in there that is just kind of like hidden gem matches that maybe you didn't see, or
That's
maybe
cool.
you have seen, but just you should see again.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was really fun, like seeing some of those. I remember I came across, it was Steve Austin against Goldust in 1997, Shotgun Saturday Night in like the bar setting in 1997 for that show. And I was just like, whoa, like this is like right where he's about to like
Yeah.
really take off. And he's in a bar wrestling Goldust. Like this is cool. So there was a lot of fun finds like that too.
I mean, the book is obviously going to answer this question, but like, and I guess you kind of answered it right there. Why Steve Austin? Like, what part of the process comes first where, like, I want to do a book on Steve and I feel like exploring the art form of his matches is what I want to do? Or is it like, I want to do something different than most wrestling books? I want to do like the art form and explore that. And I feel like Steve Austin would be a good fit. So, like, what part of that process kind of came first? And again, you answered in the book, obviously, but like, why him when from that era and even eras before that and even now, there's so many different people you could have done this for?
Yeah. So the process actually went the other way. Like, so I started with an idea of wanting to do a book, a wrestling book that hasn't really been done before. That
Yep.
was like the initial goal.
Yeah.
So I wanted to stand out and have my own little space and niche or whatever. And there wasn't a lot of books that talk about wrestling as
There's
an art
not.
form.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that. And that was kind of where the pitch started of like, hey, I want to do a book on the artistry of wrestling. And thankfully, Jonathan was like, that is a really big, like, just an incredibly wide net, because you're talking about like just an insane amount of wrestling, like
Yeah.
WWE all the way to like Japan and Mexico, and like it's too big. So great idea, but let's focus it on one specific, like make it more focused by focusing
Mhm.
on like a specific talent. And I was like, that's when like the dam opened. I'm like, wow, perfect. That makes a heck of a lot more sense.
Yep.
Is more enjoyable for the reader, and is just, could feasibly execute something like that. So once we got to that point, Steve Austin to me was like a relatively easy decision, because I wanted to do somebody that not only I felt was just like a great in-ring wrestler throughout his career, but also somebody that delivered as a really big star too.
Mhm.
Like, because I think those two things should go hand in hand in a lot of instances. The and then when I started breaking down Austin's career, the what I started seeing was like there are things that he does in 1990, 1991 that he keeps in his like toolbox of stuff that he breaks out in 1998,
Mhm.
1999. And what I started realizing is a lot of these things, like just how he interacts with the crowd, how he's able to capture the crowd. And when he doesn't have the audience, how does he hook them? What does he do? Like, to me, that's the art form of wrestling, like
Mhm.
maintaining that connection with your audience, and uh, keeping them invested in your matches, in your promos or whatever it is. And he had a real knack for that attempt from the very first match of his career. Like if you watch the first match, and we do cover that in the book,
Mhm.
he like is constantly like in tune, looking for something in the audience to connect to keep him hooked, and that lasts all the way to the match with Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38. So we were able to find like that thread, and noticing that, it made it even more of a, okay, we got to do it on this guy, because I think he's not a Will Ospreay in the ring, he's not a Bryan Danielson in the ring, but his work manipulates the crowd always.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is like what the art of wrestling really is. And so once I kind of recognized that, I'm like, all right, this is where we're going. I'm diving in.
I mean, coming out of a project like this, obviously, as you just mentioned, you come away with a bigger appreciation for Steve Austin, not only as just a performer, but like in the ring and his matches specifically. Because you think back on that era of the Attitude Era and how successful it was, and you talk about that in the book and whatnot, and how big of a part of that he was. I don't think, I mean, there obviously was great matches, but I think the best era for matches arguably could be today or even a
Yeah.
different
Oh
time
yeah.
period. You're not getting a lot of five-star classics in the late 90s, early 2000s during that Attitude Era period, specifically from Steve Austin. But do you think after doing the research for this book, do you think you not only come away from that with that bigger appreciation, like I said, but like not that he gets flack, because everyone knows that either he's the greatest of all time or one of the greatest of all time. That's the overall package. But just talking about in the ring, though, because post neck injury, post neck surgery, whatever, he clearly was not the same performer that he was in the matches that you were alluding to earlier from earlier on in his career. But he still did do a lot of the great things and capturing that art form, like you said. So where do you fall in that debate as far as like his in-ring work post neck injury and how he didn't really hold up the same, or was it great enough to where that didn't even really matter because he was kind of finding different ways to manipulate the crowd that were a bit more difficult?
Yeah. I mean, I consider him one of the best, like in the ring. And a big reason for that is those crowd reactions. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like, look, like at the end of the day, like that's what it's about.
Yep.
Like it's about taking your audience on a ride. Like there are a lot of people, like I conceivably one of us could learn how to do a Hurricane Rana, right? Like, but can you make that matter, and can you make
Mm-hmm.
it mean something, and can you make it pull the necessary reaction out of the audience? Like that to me is like, that's the real hook. And that's what separates, the like good wrestlers from the great ones. There are a lot of tremendous wrestlers that don't get to a level of Bryan Danielson because they can't layer in on top the other elements of that to make people care. Same thing with Will Ospreay. There's a lot of high flyers out there that you
Mm-hmm.
can put on, Triller or IWTV, and you can see a lot of cool moves. But part of what makes Will Ospreay so great is he's able to take it and make the audience care about it. And
Yeah.
Steve Austin, he did that, and he did that in his own way, in his own era. And there's crowd reactions there that are unmatched, in the history of the wrestling business,
Mm-hmm.
period. And so I think that when I look at wrestling, that counts for a lot. And that's part of what I try to outline in the book and try to showcase in the book is why that matters and where it came from. But also, like you said, he changed his style because of his injury. I mean, there's no question. What early part of his career as studying Steve, one of the things that I always note, and reading it back, I'd probably go, man, I really note this a lot, maybe
Mm-hmm.
too much. But the snap on his bumps is incredible. Like he
Yeah.
hits that mat with like a purpose, and it really puts over just the violence of his matches and like puts over his opponent. It's a really like cool thing. And he doesn't do it as much in his Stone Cold run because he's hurt and he doesn't take a ton of those flat backs, but he does other things. He totally pivots his character into this brawler, and he doesn't need to do a lot of moves, like
Yeah.
because it's not necessary. He's got
Yeah.
people want to see him go out there and have a fist fight with somebody. So
Mm-hmm.
I think he is really underrated in terms of listening to the crowd, adapting the style, working with them to get the reaction that he wants. And it's like a push-pull. It's a
Mm-hmm.
push-pull thing constantly. I think he just does it like with one of the best. He's one of the best at it. One of the best at it. And I hope that we paint that picture well in the book. I think we do.
And you mentioned with Will Ospreay too, you kind of see some of that in him and other performers across the companies right now. Is it like when you do the research for the book and you explore and discuss and analyze that art form, is it a lost art form today, or is it being kept alive through enough people like a Will Ospreay or other people in WWE, or is it more like a far and few between thing where you see it in today's performers but not a lot of people?
That's a great question, man. I think it's just a little bit different because I, I think like, there's just a different type of investment now than there
Yeah.
was back then. Like now it's like you go to a wrestling show and you want to see somebody have a really good match. And not that like Steve Austin didn't want to have good matches, but I think it was the investment there was, boy, we want to see Steve Austin beat up Vince McMahon. Like that's so cool. And we want to
Yeah.
see him win and see him keep his championship. And now it's like, all right, we're playing along a little bit more. We just want to see Will Ospreay like have like a really cool match so that we
Hmm.
can say we have. And I think though, like you can't fault somebody like Will Ospreay for hearing, like seeing that discourse and go, okay, well, I'm listening to that audience, and so that's what I'm going to do. So it's a little different, but I think there's always in professional wrestling, like as we talked about, like that's the end game. Those reactions, the investment, manipulating the crowd to feel a certain way in any era,
Hmm.
that is the end game. And so I think that still lives today in current day performers. Cody Rhodes, I think, is somebody that's really good at tapping into that in this kind of new era of just a different time period in wrestling. I think he's really great at it. I think
Hmm.
Seth Rollins is really great at it. So it's different, but I think ultimately the end game still plays the same.
I think it works so well too, the book and the formatting of it, and just your idea for it is because it comes from your perspective. Obviously, as a
Yeah.
lifelong fan, you have the expertise. You've seen a lot of fucking wrestling, watching a lot of Steve Austin wrestling. So it has that unique perspective as opposed to like someone breaking down their own matches or someone else from the business, which is also interesting in and of itself. But I just feel like
Yeah.
nowadays, with a lot of these wrestlers already kind of having podcasts and books, like I don't know, fans obviously we have a lot of, we're talking right now, but like coming from just the perspective that you have on it specifically and the amount of research, like it's not just that you're watching a match, you're really analyzing the art form and
Yeah.
breaking down. So it's really just like a match anatomy of many sorts,
Yeah.
with a lot of just his bigger known matches, lesser known matches, and stuff like that. Did it ever? I mean, obviously Steve Austin is one of the biggest stars of all time. He's kind of elusive in the sense where not really on social media much, doesn't do a lot of interviews nowadays. He's kind of like a recluse, doesn't really pop up in wrestling much. Did it ever cross, obviously, to get not have him involved in the project? But is it still a hope at some point where this book could maybe cross his path, get some eyes on it from him? Because I think as someone who has listened to his podcast, he's broken down a lot of his matches and he has a great eye for this sort of stuff. I feel
Yeah.
like he'd really appreciate a project like this.
The wheels are in motion to get him a copy of the book for sure.
Nice.
It's as you mentioned, it's not easy to get access to him. Hopefully, yes, we can get him a book, and hopefully, people who are watching this can help make that happen by getting it on his radar. But yeah, I hope so. I hope so because I think if nothing else, he'd be able to give some cool feedback on it, and just for my own sense of like, he has the book. That's a
Yeah.
good thing. So yeah, that would be awesome. There were preliminary, like at the beginning of the process of writing the book, there was uh thoughts of even hopes to like bounce some of this off of him or get
Hmm.
like a Austin take section on the different matches. But
Yeah.
he's got there's a lot of contractual obligations that didn't align to
Hmm.
have him involved in an independent project like this. So
Hmm.
he wasn't. And then but honestly, by the end, I think it worked better that way because as you said, it is like my take on that. And you could watch the same slate of matches and maybe see some of the same stuff, but
Hmm.
also see some different things too. So it works in that end where it is a completely like independent analysis of his run in its
Yep.
entirety. And so I think in the end we landed in a good spot even without him.
I think I've seen a couple of wrestling books come on the last couple of years, and it seems like someone who always appreciates a copy of this sort of stuff and would definitely read it and check it out. I don't know how you would get a hold of him. I don't have his number. Bret Hart, I feel like is someone, if you could
Yeah.
get in touch with him or somehow get him a copy of the book or something, get his eyes on it, he would not only read it, but he would give you feedback. I just from other stuff that I've seen, and he feels
Yeah.
like the type of guy. I mean, he was involved in some of these matches, so like, he
Yeah.
would
Oh
have, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah. One of the fun
obviously,
parts
so
about writing about the Steve Austin was I got to write a lot about Brett too,
yeah.
because of those matches that he had with him, and we covered the Survivor Series match, and obviously
Mhm.
we cover in great detail the WrestleMania 13 match in Chicago. So that's a great call, great call. I'm literally gonna like scour some resources right after this to try to get
Yeah,
him a
yeah.
copy.
I feel like he'd be the perfect person for it. Obviously, with his run in the ring, not lasting as long as it probably could have, should have, whatever, retiring at an early age. Obviously, coming back for the one more match a couple of years ago, but we missed out on a lot of Steve Austin. I mean, for as long as we had him in the ring across all these companies, he had an incredible run. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be
Mhm,
talking about it right now.
mhm.
How do you think his in ring work would have stood the test of time? Like even by 02, 03, obviously he was still a massive star, but like the whole thing, from 02 when he walked out and they were gonna have him job to Brock and like the opening
Yeah,
round of the King of the Ring or whatever it was. I don't know if he would have been still at the same level that he was at the Attitude Era. I don't know when he would have retired. I don't know if we're talking late 2000s, early 2010s. It's weird to imagine Steve Austin in like the PG era of WWE
yeah,
being the same
yeah.
character. Do you think, I mean, obviously his in-ring work from that period has stood the test of time. How do you think his legacy, as someone who's done so much research on him, would have either changed or been modified or whatever had he stuck around longer? Like someone like a Hulk Hogan was around for a really long time, never really had a last match, and his in-ring work obviously faded as time went on. And he's no Steve Austin in the ring, obviously. But just your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been difficult. I mean, not to like necessarily like sustain his star power, because I think he has everlasting star power in
Yeah,
wrestling just because of what he was. So I think there's always like he'd always have like the pops, and I generally think that would be there.
definitely.
I think his reaction would be a lot like Undertaker's, in terms of like, okay, Steve Austin's here, we cheer.
Hmm.
Um, but unlike Undertaker, the Austin character, I just don't. It doesn't work as well like one-off stuff like Undertaker did to kind
Hmm.
of keep his career longer. I don't know, for whatever reason, like it just seems to me like the character um works better as like, I'm here always and I'm fighting and I'm just doing what I do and we're drinking beer, we're having a good time. And whereas Undertaker, like the mystique of him like not being around and then being around, I think was okay. Austin, it's a little weirder for me to think about that. So it when I look at it, I'm like, could he have had a career like John Cena where he's around for 20,
Exactly.
25
Yeah.
years, or Randy Orton?
Hmm.
It'd be really hard. And I think it would also be hard to see him in like a really polished WWE. Like
Yeah.
in 1998 and 1999, like when you watch an episode of Raw, I mean, it is that it looks raw, like it's
Hmm.
grainy at times, but it's really like cool, it's edgy, and Stone Cold is the face of that. Well, fast forward 10 years and it's like, okay, now you're in this like super polished like corporatized wrestling, and not that that's bad, it's just different. And so I think seeing him in that environment would have been weird. Bottom line, wink nod, pun intended, uh is I think that he's a good enough performer where we would have seen a pivot in some form or
Yeah.
fashion. Like I
Yeah.
think he's good enough and recognizes, like, so if we would have seen him wrestle in 2010, 2011, 2012, yes, it would have been Stone Cold Steve Austin, but I think there would have been a pivot around something to freshen it up or make that character work. He was a smart performer in that way. And so it's almost impossible to analyze because we don't know
Yeah.
what he would have come
Exactly.
up
Yeah.
with, but I think it would have been something.
Especially if he were to last until that period, he would have not had the neck injury, obviously. Like he
Sure.
retired in
Yeah.
'03 for a reason. So if he doesn't have that neck injury, then what do his
You do
matches look
more.
like?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
would have had to evolve in some way. As we wind down here, I mean, I guess an obvious question, but after doing all the research for this book, is there any is your favorite Steve Austin match still your favorite Steve Austin match, or is there another one that comes to mind? Like, what are some of your top ones? I mean, maybe not anytime soon because you're probably, like we said, sick of watching it at this point. But some of your favorite Stone Cold matches to rewatch or promos too, I guess.
So one of my favorite Steve Austin matches, even though he turns heel at the end, is the WrestleMania 17 match. I think
Of
that's one
course.
of like the perfect matches. It starts out great. I think it flows really well. They got the audience. It's one of my favorite Stone Cold matches, and like that's that.
Mhm.
Brett and Austin at WrestleMania 13, obviously that's up there. I don't think I'm breaking any news with those two.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's another match. Gosh, I wish I had the book in front of me because I love this match. It's him and The Rock at like an early, like late 1997 In
One of
Your
those rock
House show.
bottom
It was
things,
Rock
yeah.
Bottom, maybe
Might be, I don't
something.
know
Yeah,
why I pulled that out, but yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it's rock bottom.
it may be Rock Bottom. Um, that's what became one of my favorite matches when I was watching all this stuff, because I was like, man, this crowd is like they're boiling. Like he is reaching like a boiling point
Yeah.
with his popularity, and like the water's bubbling and it's about to like spill over the edge, and you can really get a sense of that like in this match in particular. It's the one with all the spots on the truck.
Yep, yep,
It's
yep.
the match I'm talking about, where they, he tosses D'Lo Brown on the truck,
Mhm.
he beats everybody up, and it's like a Stone Cold Steve Austin match. There's maybe, I think there's like maybe like 5 moves in it. That's it.
Mhm.
Like the rest is just brawling. The crowd's going nuts. It's a really cool match to see. And then the last thing I'll say is the I enjoyed and was surprised by how much I enjoyed the Hollywood Blondes era of his
Mhm.
career. Like I knew it, but I didn't know it as well as I knew other eras. And so diving into that head first was really fun, because there's a lot of matches out there. Obviously, there's stuff with Flair and Arn and some really strong opponents. But also, like, what it was fun seeing is him kind of open up his personality a little bit. Like everybody talks about that ECW, though, that time period as when
Yep.
like Stone Cold was born, and I think that's factually correct. And after watching it back, it's absolutely critically correct too. But you do have to fast forward a few years before that, because the Hollywood Blondes and him playing off of Brian Pillman opened him up, and it showed another side of his personality, and I think it just gave him more range as a character, and that was really fun to watch. So that was probably like I enjoyed writing that chapter most, because
Yeah.
it was freshest to me. But also, like, you kind of see, you're like, whoa, like you had this performer who's good before, but man, playing off this other guy, it opened up all sorts of and character traits.
That's cool. No, I think it's such a cool concept too, especially going back and exploring those early matches and stuff like that. I mean, especially with the Hollywood Blonde stuff. I mean, obviously it's a very notable run, but I think they do
Yeah.
such a good, I mean, they don't, I feel like that stuff isn't highlighted enough. I mean, you see the occasional Twitter account like bring up some of those matches like the old school stuff, but not really do a deep dive into it the same way that you do into your book. So I think that's cool, and it kind of shines some light onto that era of his career. But last question for you here, dude. Just talking about, like, again, the concept, like I mentioned earlier, I think is so cool from your perspective
Thank
personally, with
you.
all the,
Thank you.
absolutely, with all the content you've consumed and being a fan for as long as you have and having that perspective on it. Do you have an idea to do another book like this down the road? Maybe not right now, because this is such a long process, and I know it's an arduous process, to do something similar to this in a sequel on another performer that might come to mind.
I hope so. I really hope so. I had a blast writing the book, and it was a long process, but I wouldn't trade it in for anything. It was really a fun process, and rewarding, and it's great to just see people picking it up and reading it. I hope to do another one. Yeah, and when I think about, there's 2 guys that I think about that could make a lot of sense, and different types of wrestlers than Steve Austin. First
Mhm.
is Shawn Michaels. I think he would be a
Of course.
really good person to do this on. Different kind of wrestler,
Mhm.
different kind of run, just different. And then like the other one would be much a bigger of an undertaking, but it would be Ric Flair, and
Oh,
trying
wow. Okay.
to do that, and just have a really big project there. There's a lot of Ric Flair stuff out there, so you have to find a way to make the project fit. But I think he's
Yeah.
definitely a wrestler um, that could that you could do a similar type of project.
There's definitely no shortage of matches to analyze for him or
No,
for Shawn
right,
Michaels,
right.
obviously. But like I said, maybe not anytime soon. We'll let the dust settle on this
We'll
one.
let this breathe first. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. You know, you deserve a break after all the work you put into making, this happen and whatnot. But speaking of which,
Thank you.
dude, I mentioned earlier, it's available on Amazon right now. It's cool to see it in the fine print on Amazon, seeing it there
Thank
after
you.
seeing you talk about it for so long, now getting it out. But where else can people buy the book and, get their hands on it?
So right now, Amazon is like the sole place. You can get
Cool.
all the versions of it on Amazon. So we have a paperback version, we've got a Kindle version, and we've
Hmm.
got another e-edition type ebook version there too. So that is the place to get it. In the future, there may be a couple other spots, but that is like the key place. It ships really soon. Like you don't have to wait a long time to get it. Right now, the orders are flowing out smoothly, and so it's just a couple days.
Cool.
So that is where I'd point people to. That's easiest. So yeah, go there, and I hope you do, and I hope you enjoy it.
Where can people find you, dude? I know you're on the Twitter machine, and obviously you're promoting the
Yeah,
book
man.
there. And then I think is there a separate Twitter account for the book as well, or no? Or people
For
should just
the
follow you?
well, follow me definitely because
Yeah, yeah.
I'll keep everybody up to speed. We're also going to do some fun stuff, maybe with a companion podcast. So more on that
Cool.
coming up. But Zack_Heydorn, Heydorn is where you can find me on Twitter. I'd also point you to Hybrid Shoot at Hybrid Shoot. That's the publisher. They're doing a lot of promotion for the book too, and have in addition to this project, some other really cool projects in the hopper. But I think if you like this book, you'll like that too. And it's supporting independent publishing at the same time, which is always a good thing. So you can follow them also.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on. Glad we can connect over this finally, over audio, video, whatever. It will not be the last time. I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon. We'll definitely have to maybe. I'm not a beer guy. I don't drink. I've had a couple of those Steve. I just like holding the can. I just like having the can. I don't
The
actually
cans,
drink the alcohol, but maybe we can share a Steve Wise or something the next time I see you in person.
that'd be great, man. I again appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be here, and yeah, we'll definitely catch up again real soon.
I look forward to it, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.